I am recording at 120 BPM.
Where do you see this?
So if you go up to the top of
beats,
beats, and go to beats and project.
Beats and project. Got it. Yeah, I'm at 120 as well.
Okay, cool.
I'm also in C major, 4/4 time signature.
Good to know. All good things. C major. I like to think that we're actually talking in A minor, which is the relative minor of the C major scale. So all the same notes, but just arranged differently so that they sound sad.
Oh, I did download the Musician app.
What's that?
Yesterday. It's one of the learn piano, or actually I think they do guitar, ukulele, maybe bass, vocals, and piano. And yeah, because I have a piano, as you can see. No one listening can, but I have a piano. I grew up playing piano, and I have never, ever been good at it. I took lessons almost consistently from ages 6 to 18, and I still suck at it. And I especially now, I don't remember a lot of, theory and chords, and I'd love to get to a point where I just, could improv a little bit, and, I could, do parodies of pop songs and things like that. Because I do enjoy playing it. But the Musician app is fun because it kind of feels like a phone game, but also you're getting better at piano.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I'm still on the free version. I'm not committing quite yet.
This episode was brought to you by Musician.
Yes, please.
use code BIGGER69 to get a free upgrade to the pro version.
Man, if we ever get sponsorships, we've got to try to ask if that can be.
Yeah, we have to make
69.
Make all of the codes inappropriate.
Speaking of, let's start the show.
Let's start the show. And 3, 2, 1, go. I forget who starts talking.
You do.
Oh, I do. All right. And hello, and welcome to Everything's Bigger, special quarantine edition.
We're in isolation.
Oh, God.
It's a podcast about masculinity for dudes of all genders who ask why.
And when you look at the concept of masculinity, it's a whole lot like a birthday cake. On the outside, you see something that's uniform, it's frosted, maybe a little bit decorated, kind of adorned. But as soon as you cut that sumbitch open, you see that there's layers. You see that there's different kinds of filling, different kinds of cake sometimes. Maybe there's some sprinkles. And then you really, kind of run with that idea and you think that nothing's as simple on the nothing's as simple as it appears on the surface. And then you got to ask yourself the real big question. Is birthday cake flavored stuff just cake flavored? Or are there 1,000 different flavors of birthday cake? And that's kind of how I think about masculinity. There's layers to it, and there's a bunch of different ways for it to be, for it to exist.
I mean, what even makes it a birthday cake? Like a birthday cake? I guess just the fact that we say it's for a birthday. In the same way, the only way to be any gender is to say that you are, that to identify, to innately feel it, just like a birthday cake.
You have to assign the birthdayness at bake.
Right. Yeah, the cake must assign it unto itself.
Yes. Yes, to claim it.
Yeah. Wow, we got deep right there at the start. Well, in any case, I'm Jackson Bird.
And I'm Bo Mendez.
And today, quite on topic to this birthday cake, we are talking about turning 30, as we will both be 30 next month in May. But, we were always going to do this episode, and then a little thing happened. You might have heard about it.
Things changed.
There's a pandemic happening. And so that's, that is, we're going to discuss how that has sort of changed our thoughts and feelings on turning 30.
Right.
But one thing I do want to say with regards to the pandemic right at the start is, if you were listening to this and you hear any difference in audio quality from usual, or if you're watching on YouTube and you're like, where are your faces? It is because we live in New York City, so we are both in lockdown. We are in our separate apartments across the city from each other. Fortunately, unrelated to this podcast, within the last several months, we both got nicer microphones, which has enabled us to do this remotely. But yeah, we are in isolation. We are self-quarantining. We hope that all of you are as well, that you're staying home unless you have to go out if you're an essential worker.
That's right. If you've gathered together in a large group to listen to this podcast, you're doing it wrong. You're letting Bill de Blasio down. You're letting Andrew Cuomo down. You're letting Dr. Oxiris Bardot down. You're letting Cardi B down. And you're letting us down. So stay safe out there,
Yeah.
folks.
I mean, in general, I would love the idea that there were people who actually gathered together to listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
Because first of all, that doesn't even happen to podcasts that often.
There aren't
I do,
like podcast listen parties.
I mean, I do remember like back in like 2010, my friends and I used to get together in like a dorm room to listen to Radio Lab together.
That's amazing.
And it was such a wonder. It felt like listening to the radio back in the day. Back in the day that none of us were alive for. But
gather around, we're going to listen to the radio show. But first, we have to listen to Franklin Delano Roosevelt give one of his famous fireside chats. Sponsored by soap.
But I want to listen to the new Little Orphan Annie. Remember to drink your Ovaltine.
Oh, dude, don't knock Ovaltine. I love me some Ovaltine.
No, that was just the in A Christmas Story. That's just the thing on the radio. But no, if you are doing that, I do not approve in this instance. Please do not gather together to listen to this podcast. Do not gather together to do anything.
And to go back
it's
to
within your own home.
Exactly. To go back to something that Jack said, actually has got me thinking about, if you're not an essential worker, I just want to say, like, if you are an essential worker, and we've definitely learned at this time the flexibility of what essential really means. I am among the lucky that can do my job from home, but I know there's a lot of people out there that cannot. And at least in this city, we are learning very quickly just how much we really rely on you. So if you're one of those folks, medical worker, grocery store stock person, bodega owner,
HVAC
delivery
engineer,
driver, any of those things, just thank you and stay safe. And thanks for doing what you do. And we'll try to do our part to squash this.
Yeah, and I know, one thing I keep seeing a lot of folks saying, especially people like grocery store workers, is, one thing that we can be doing is during and especially after this, talking to our Congress people and fighting for fair wages and trying to increase the wages of everyone who we now know and deeply realize how essential they are, and they deserve to earn a living wage and benefits and have all the rights that people in other industries do.
Yeah, I'd really like to see somebody tell me with a straight face now that somebody who's like making sure that you can buy 16 rolls of toilet paper on your next trip to fucking Costco doesn't deserve $15 an hour. But that's for another day.
Yeah, we can do a whole episode on workers' rights if we want sometime.
Oh man, this is like people are about to see like the dawn of finally radicalized Bo.
Finally radicalized.
I've been like a left leaning centrist for all of my life, and now I'm just like, nah, man. Like let's take to the streets when we can.
Not at the moment, though.
Right. Yes.
Oh, I didn't like this. I saw a headline. Admittedly, didn't read it. That there are some anti-abortion activists who are trying to sue, I believe, the state of North Carolina because they can't gather to protest. And I'm just like, no.
That sucks. It's an interesting thing because would you say that a shelter-in-place order is technically a violation of the right to protest? But it's also not like it's not a congressional thing. So like that's where the First Amendment kind of like falls flat. I don't know. I'm not a con law professor anymore, not in this life. But yeah, that really is that's a dick move.
Yeah, it was, just one of the many, many wild things that is happening right now. It's interesting. I love speculative fiction. And one of the things that I love about it is that you can come up with this one change in the world. And then you just gotta, you consider all of the different things that happen from it and all the things that you never really would have thought of before, challenging yourself to think of that. And that feels like what we're living through right now.
Yeah, I always think that like good sci-fi and good speculative fiction boils down to a what if question. And so it's right now we're experiencing what if can't talk to people in person?
Yeah. And what's funny is for everything, there is a community, there is a subset of experts who are like, yes, we've been telling you this forever. I don't think there's a single thing that someone didn't have on their bingo card.
Yeah, like I think definitely like the people who have always been organizing for like workers' rights are like, well, yes, you fucking see now. And then people talking about like how fragile the medical infrastructure is like, well, duh. So everything, it's all laid bare. It's very raw right now.
Yeah, no, it is very raw, and this whole episode will not be about that, we promise, because we do want it to be a little bit escapist.
Right, but it is the elephant in the room at the same time. Like it's
exactly.
like a positive of this is that the fact that we can do this. Like right
Yeah.
now, we're in two separate zip codes. We're separated
I mean, to
by
be fair, this is New York City. 2 apartments down from me is a separate zip code.
right. I know that's
No, I'm
what
sorry.
I was starting to inflate the scale. You know, like we're technically separated by Newtown Creek. You know, we have a whole body of water running between where we are, numerous highways and
Mhm.
roadways and all that kind of infrastructure. And yet here we are, at least still being able to have this conversation
Yeah.
together, but not together.
Remote connecting.
Be apart
Uh,
now so we can all be together later.
yes. Oh, there's a great artist on Instagram. He had a thing that said, "April distance brings May existence." It's a little bit grim, but also nice.
Well, it's also like true. Yeah, it makes sense. But yeah, so to kind of like I don't know, hone in, zoom in on what it is that we normally would talk about when not under the conditions of a pandemic, but at the same time still address that that's where we are. Um, I want to. How can we see the impact of masculinity on the circumstances that we're seeing right now, and also vice versa, the impact of the pandemic circumstances on men and masculine identifying people and our notions of masculinity?
Yeah, I mean, in so many ways, in kind of what we were just talking about, of how there's so many different fallout factors that you wouldn't have imagined, and I think that that is true when you're looking at men as a population, as a demographic. I think a big thing that has been on a lot of people's minds is mental health, and a lot of people who were even proactive in trying to treat their mental health might be having problems not being able to like see a therapist or go to a support group or access prescriptions, but
Hmm.
men are kind of, to generalize, worse at seeking out that help, and so might and worse at talking to people in their lives. And I think a lot of men are probably really struggling with that right now, and struggling with the pressures of feeling like they need to maybe support a family when they've lost a job. I think we've got that side of things for sure. Um, and whether that is a part of this other thing or not, the other thing being something that I have been seeing a lot is that men are apparently affected by coronavirus worse. They're not necessarily being infected more than other genders, although we will have to say binary men and women because that's what's tracked by medical records.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
whole nother thing that I want to get into at some point.
I would
In
love to discuss one element of that.
okay,
Well, but we'll just finish saying of men are basically, one of the scary things about coronavirus is that a bunch of people are asymptomatic, don't have any symptoms at all. Some people get it in very mild amounts if they are affected. You can
hmm,
recover at home. Some people get very, very sick. And at first, everyone was like, "Oh, it's just the elderly and people with pre-existing conditions," as if that's not a problem. First of all,
right, yeah,
but we have now seen that it's more equal opportunity type of virus.
hmm,
The extreme conditions and the deaths can happen to anyone, even if they are otherwise totally healthy and younger and what have you. Um, and one thing that we're seeing with that is that it does seem like men are the ones who are having those extreme situations more often, and dying in higher numbers, and so that's a scary thing.
yeah, and not even just men, but like I remember. I guess this was maybe a week ago. I was looking at some numbers, and it was men in our age group. It was like men 18 to 44, because I know that
Yeah.
when this whole thing started, I know that it is callous to be like, oh, it's only people that aren't me. But at the same time, that survival instinct can kick in and be like, oh, it's only
Hmm.
people that aren't me. And you feel like you can, maybe be more proactive and get out there and help, or maybe make yourself available for other things that other folks wouldn't be able to do. And then I see those numbers and it's like, oh shit, no, that's not the case. In fact, it's the inverse
Yeah.
to a degree. Um, and so like it just makes me wonder for me, like I had a bit of an axe to grind when this was all starting off. I wonder how much of it is behaviorally related, just because like I can't count the number of times that I've been in like an arena bathroom, a venue bathroom, a museum bathroom, any other kind of bathroom, and see that like I'm the only guy who's properly washing my hands.
Yeah.
And
I
and I
always
and
feel
I,
so self-conscious that I'm gonna get clocked because I'm washing my hands.
Well, I even say properly with like quote fingers around it, because like until this moment in time, I was like a 5 second soap and water scrubber, and now I'm like an
Bo, it was like a
intense.
year ago that I told you about the singing the ABCs twice thing.
I know, and I filed it away as in like, when am I ever going to need this? And you know what? I'm fucking great at washing my damn hands now. But it made me think about all the times where I'll never forget. There was a guy that I used to work with, and if he's listening, I'm not trying to drag him or anything like that. We were young, working retail together, and he was like, "Yeah, it's my own junk. Why would I wash my hands after touching that?
Yeah, I've heard that so much.
It's inherently clean." And I was like, you know what? He's got a point. And then I thought about the bathroom that we were using at this store, and I was like, no. You wouldn't want to wash your hands after like walking past it.
Yeah, the two responses to that I have. One is I have sometimes had the same thing, especially within my own home, maybe, where I'm like, I didn't really like touch anything, like I don't. But then I'm like, well, one should wash one's hands multiple times throughout the day, so I see it more as like, oh, this is the time that I am at a sink with soap, and I will wash my hands, not so much because of anything that just happened. But the other thing is, yeah, public bathrooms are freaking gross, and occasionally I have not washed my hands in public bathrooms because I feel like I will get dirtier if I do, so I just go use some hand sanitizer outside of the bathroom.
Yeah, and now hand sanitizer has equal value to gold.
Although
Like,
it's not a replacement for washing your hands, I will say.
this is true. We've if you haven't seen it, look up the blacklight photos. This has actually
Yeah.
been like really validating for me, because I was like, well, I should I be using some sort of like heavy duty sort of stuff? And it's like, nah, dude, soap emulsifies all the gross shit on your hands and washes it away. You're gonna be good. But yeah, so it just got me thinking about behavioral things. Are men less likely to be taking care of themselves in that basic hygienic way? And we've seen the importance of not washing your hands, the importance of touching your face, and all that sort of stuff, and how it leads to spreading this. Big ol' open mouth coughs, huge lion roar sneezes, getting up in people's faces and yelling. And I'm casting a really wide net. Usually when I talk about men's behavior, I kind of like have an asterisk that's like toxic masculinity behavior, and I think that all of those are kind of within that umbrella. So I'm thinking about that, but I'm also thinking about, kind of dovetailing what you were saying about mental health. I'm also thinking about, is maybe one of the reasons why you see these more severe cases, these more cases of intense hospitalizations and potentially deaths, because men tend to be raised to not ask for help and to
Yeah.
not let somebody know that they're feeling sick.
Yeah, I think when we talk about behavior, there's totally those two sides of it, of one that can sound kind of like chastising of men, and one that is a little bit more empathetic of men. And the one is like, oh, men are like too pig-headed to take this seriously, and the other is like, men have been conditioned not to ask for help. And I think like both are true in different elements for different people and stuff. But like, yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting of there's sort of all of these behavioral ways that could maybe contribute. I know we both read a couple of articles because we're both very curious and concerned when we saw these reports coming out that like, oh, men are dying more than women, at least in U.S. reports. I was very curious when I saw that of where I fell on that, because there are some like behavior wise, I don't know, not sure where I fall behavior wise. I guess I need to do some self assessment on that one.
Well, you got nothing but time.
Yeah, but if we're talking about biology and physiology, it's like, okay, well, it depends what they think the cause of this is. And so I was doing some reading, and there's a couple of different theories. One is that I guess the like I don't know, something about your immune system is coded onto the X chromosome.
Right.
And so that's one theory as to why people who are born with two X chromosomes, which is majority women, are more immune to a lot of things. And now, like most humans, I have not had my chromosomes analyzed, but I believe that I probably have two X chromosomes. So I was like, okay, so that's good for me. Not in the scary category there. But then the other thing that I saw was another theory is that uh, changes in hormones affect it too. So apparently, some studies have shown that estrogen is also more helpful for immunity. I
Interesting.
guess on previous SARS viruses, there were some trials done with mice where they either removed their ovaries, which is the source of estrogen, or I think that is what they did, and those mice were then more susceptible to SARS.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and I was like, okay, so on that side of things, like I take synthetic testosterone, so my testosterone levels are like a cis man's
Hmm.
equivalent to that, and my estrogen are really low. So I was like, okay, I lose out on that one. But that's what's complicated about all these things. Being a trans person, just like headline, like men are more susceptible to extreme reactions to coronavirus, and I'm like, cool. I don't know where I fall.
Yeah, and you kind of like see that it's sort of a weird thing, and I can already hear like turf echoes coming through the walls of like, biology is biology, and then I
Hmm.
hear biologists coming through the walls being like, actually biology is fucking complicated, bro.
Oh yeah,
So it is interesting to see kind of the overlap between like how journalism, the societal practice, another way of humans attempt to categorize and quantify and make sense of the world, is kind of superimposing itself over what's going on within our bodies and physiology. And it's kind
yeah,
of like flattening things into a binary when it's not going to be that simple. And it's going
yeah.
to
We don't want
vary from
to.
person to person.
Yeah, we don't want to flatten complicated ideas. We want to flatten the
Flatten the
curve.
fucking curve.
That's what we're working on.
We're coming for you, curve.
We're gonna wash our hands.
Yeah. So
Stay
yeah.
home when we can.
I also kind of like, that is a really interesting thing to think about, because then you also have like, what if there are plenty of cis men who have different levels of their hormones in their body, and
Hmm.
I'm saying this as somebody who eats a shit ton of fake meat, and I've read from different sources that increases your levels of estrogen because of the introduction of plant estrogen into your body, which could be bullshit. A lot of things are likely to be bullshit when it comes from certain sources, but it does make me wonder, like, okay, do I no longer like, is are things more complicated for even a cis person like me? Like,
It would be really fascinating if you were at some point after all this is over and we can go for elective procedures at healthcare places again. If you like just got some blood work done and could see what your testosterone levels were, I'd be fascinated to just compare. Because I have to get that done twice a year, so I know.
well, and especially like there is like that toxic side of cis men too, that they ascribe all these behaviors to being low T.
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, and like, I this is all much like you said about like the chromosomes and whatnot. Who the fuck is out there regularly testing their T if they don't have to,
Hmm.
and just like all these, there are so many men that just like make this assumption that like their behavior, the way that they are as a person, is just because they're just like chock full of testosterone, my guy, coming out the ears with that shit. So I don't even know. I'm not sure where I'm going with that.
So as we're recording, I am in my home office, which is a corner of my bedroom, and I'm right next to all of my gender theory books, and I have here The Trouble with Testosterone, which is a book of essays on biology and the human predicament by Robert Sapolsky.
With what appears to be Mighty Mouse on the cover.
Yes, I haven't read all the essays, so I'm not sure what the
Fantastic. It makes
yeah.
it look like a kid's book. The alliterative title and Mighty Mouse on the cover is like, okay, all right, kids. The trouble with
I feel like you
testosterone.
find that with a lot of science writers' books is they're really into the puns and the alliteration and things like that.
Hmm.
I don't completely have a point to make with that. I just wanted to show off that I had a book analyzing testosterone to go along with your point of
Yeah.
like there is just so much that we say about it and things that we attribute to it. And when you dive into the science, it's not that the science necessarily debunks everything,
Hmm.
but it does just show that it's a bit more complicated. One might say that everything's bigger when you get up close and really dive in.
You said the name of the movie. No, that's been like my life's realization, is that all the things that we do, whether it's scientific exploration or philosophy or sociology or something like that, all we ever really learn from it is that shit is complex.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we then end up doubling back as a society to try and take these things that we've learned from whatever discipline, distill them down into factoids, and be like, no, it's actually quite simple. Where you see that in like economics. Oh, it's simple, man. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Or
Mm.
you see this in government. Oh, it's simple, man. Like the people don't want a strong central government and that sort of stuff. And then you look at the actual theory of people who have devoted their entire lives to unpacking this stuff, whether it's any those two disciplines or especially science. I feel,
Mm-hmm.
and all they're ever really finding is like, oh no, there's more to learn
Mm-hmm.
there. And the categories that we've set up or the ways of thinking about it that we've ascribed to for X number of years no longer really apply in their entirety. We got to kind of like stretch it out. We got to blow it up a little bit and see how we can make sense of these new complications. Think about like at some point the smallest particle that we knew existed was the atom, and then we got inside the atom and learned that
Mm-hmm.
there are a whole bunch more little particles in there, and then we cut some of those in half, and then it just got shit gets weird.
And I do want to say on that note, like we know so little about COVID-19 right now,
Hmm.
and we, especially in the United States, are doing such a bad job at widespread accurate testing. So all
Hmm.
this stuff that we were saying before, like yes, we're referring to articles that we'll put in the show notes, but things about men are more susceptible to extreme cases or men are dying in higher rates. Like this is all like yes, individual or even groups of scientists are saying this. Like it's just everything you've got to take with a grain of salt right now.
Hmm.
There's so much more to it and it's so much more complicated. But we are we're just a podcast of two dudes chatting, and so this
Yeah.
is more just like that those were our reactions when we saw those articles and those claims. We're not trying to like claim to be scientists and
Right.
saying
Right.
this is the fact, so
Yeah.
please don't take anything that we're saying particularly about
Yeah.
coronavirus to be
I've
fact.
I've always said that I'm a man of science and the fact that I'm very interested in the subject, but I don't have any sort of like real formal training outside of that one lab that I took in undergrad where I got to make a fuel cell out of hydrogen.
I just remembered that I took a science class in college.
Isn't it bonkers? I just remember that I took a math course. I took
Oh, I took math too.
I
This
had
is how you know
tested.
we're humanities kids. We're like,
Yeah, right.
oh,
Oh, math, the one
in
with the
addition
numbers.
to all my
Yeah,
English classes.
yeah. Like I had actually tested out of math, and then I was like, I'm gonna be a chemical engineer, and I went back to take a
Ooh.
math course because I needed more math credits, and I was like, I am not gonna be a chemical engineer by the middle of the semester.
Remembering. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I took that class pass fail.
Oh yeah. I think I took my physics class pass fail, but it didn't occur to me until it was over that I had done that, and I was like, gosh darn it. But no, I'm really glad I remembered that because recently I was playing trivia with some friends, and there was some type of science question, and I was like, oh man, I haven't taken a science class since like sophomore year of high school, and then I realized that that was more than half my life ago. And that made me feel real bad. So I'm
Oh,
glad that I at least took it, 10 years ago. I took a science class. But
well,
I think that can transition us a
yeah.
little bit into
That's a
our.
pretty damn good segue.
I had a different one planned though, and I still want to use it. So I'm just gonna. There's a great tweet that Bo shared recently because I do. We're about to start to talk about how we are turning 30, and if you were older than us and listening to this, I'm sure you're just gonna be like, oh, these youngins having their existential crisis, or maybe you are some of our teenage listeners and you're appalled at how old we are. Maybe you're
Things
someone
to
who's been
look forward
following.
to, kids.
Yeah, maybe you've been following me for years and think that I'm 15. No, indeed, I am twice that amount. But anyways,
And I can say with your corn stash, I can attest to your distinguished aged look.
oh, thank you. Yeah, maybe if I can. Here's the thing I've realized. So, for anyone who's, I mean, we're the only two looking at each other right now.
Yeah.
So what am I saying? Anyone who has not seen or heard on my social media, I've been trying to grow out a mustache because I have like the level of facial hair where like it takes a while to grow. So you can't. I just if I'm seeing people every day, I can't just wait 2 weeks for it to get out of the awkward phase.
Hmm.
And I wasn't sure if my mustache could get out of the awkward phase, and I feel like it just barely has now. And
Yeah.
now I'm like, well, now I might never shave it because when will I be able to regrow it?
Yeah, yeah. I like to think that if it's visible over a video call, that now you have facial hair.
Nice. All right. It's almost visible. It depends on your
On the screen
connection
resolution,
quality.
I guess.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
actually went up to my wife Sloan earlier, and I was like, I think I might shave my entire face. What do you think? And she
Ooh.
was like, no, like shut it down immediately. It was
I
hilarious.
can't imagine you with no facial hair.
I don't have a ton of facial hair. It's not hard, but
I think it's mostly your sideburns. Would you ever shorten your sideburns?
I have before, and I really, really hated it.
Mhm.
Because like the reason why I even have for those of you just listening, and if you've never seen one of our videos, I have what I call metalcore burns, which are like the kind of like mutton chop sideburns that every hardcore frontman from every metal band had in the year like 2005, 2006, because that's the only way that you can tell where my face ends. Otherwise, I just kind of like blend into the wall, and I look like kind of a disembodied head.
I mean, literally, my like the attempt at a beard that's mostly just neck beard that I rock is also just sort of like, oh, I feel like there's not any I don't know, like edges to my face without it.
It's like seeing a cartoon without an outline. You just feel like you're fucking Zordon from Power Rangers, just like this kind of like semi-translucent bald head floating around giving people orders.
I have often thought that like facial hair is kind of like makeup. Like for people with facial hair who don't wear makeup, it's their makeup.
Absolutely is.
Yeah.
And for people with like particularly resplendent facial hair, then it's their entire personality.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I have a couple of friends who can grow like mad good beards, and I'm just like, all right, dude, you do you. That's great.
Yeah. My friend Dan has an amazing beard.
Mhm.
And much other personality besides that. He's a fantastic individual. But
yeah.
anyways,
Yeah.
we're so we've been talking about the coronavirus, and now we're talking about turn 30. And I just wanted to share this tweet because yes, we are turning 30, and we both feel like, oh my gosh, we're like getting old, but we still make the cut for one thing. And I say make the cut, I should really say we are in danger of this one thing, and this is really serious. I'm just loading it right now. Okay, so this was a tweet from Nicola Coughlin. I will link in the show notes. It says, I know this time of self-isolation is hard and scary for people, but however bad you're feeling, please don't consider starting your own podcast. She adds, straight men under the age of 35 are particularly vulnerable to this, and we all need to be vigilant of the dangers.
And I got seen, absolutely red, dragged by that. I'm talking like Metal Gear Solid stepped into the guard's path and the exclamation point pops up, like whoop, sort of stuff. Like, damn, that tweet destroyed me.
I just gotta say, we did start this before the pandemic.
This is true, yeah. So it's really more of like...
Although technically the first episodes might not have come out until it had already been an issue abroad.
We dropped the first ones on December 23rd.
Yeah, I think Patient Zero, as far as we know right now in Wuhan, was in November.
Are you serious?
Yeah, but also with how many people are asymptomatic, there's a lot of, I say speculation, but educated guesses among experts and scientists and stuff that it started a lot earlier.
Jeez. Whew. Well,
so technically we fell prey to this.
Yeah. Oh man, here we are, just dudes with microphones mounted to our desks, pretending like our opinions matter.
Yep. Yeah, exactly who we are. There's no lie there.
But at the same time, we are taking advantage of what you showed me in that SNL David Harbour clip of how the distance of a podcast microphone and now a podcast microphone and a couple of zip codes provides many masculine identifying people with the safety net that they need to open up and be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
I'm proud of the man that you've become and that I've become. So I just want you to know that.
I can't even take you seriously. All right, we gotta start this main topic.
All right,
40
cool.
minutes in. Let's talk.
As we've said, in the coming month, about a month and some change.
Yeah, for you, I'm T-minus 1 month at date of recording.
Yeah, that's true. I have until the end of May.
Yeah, my birthday's right at the start. His is right at the end.
Gemini season. What up? I'm two-faced.
I always wanted to be a Gemini. Stuck being a Taurus.
It's fine. Like our star sign isn't cool. It's twins.
Yeah, I've always thought twins were super cool. I always wanted a twin.
But it's well, okay. Well, I will
I'm
say
a bull. I can't even pronounce it.
what bull?
Bull. I don't know. Bull and bowl. Oh wait, I did bowl. What's the thing you eat cereal out of?
A bowl,
A
and
bowl.
and now that we have our fancy microphones and our audio recording software, we'll be able to go back and isolate the moment you say bull and
Bull.
bowl, and you'll be
Bowl.
able to notice the sonic differences.
Yeah, just insert some slowed down repetition
Yeah,
here.
this isn't a Minnesota bag situation.
I've been told I have a bit of a Midwestern accent, which, considering I only lived in the Midwest till I was 2.5, I'm a little upset about. But
They
whatever.
imprinted on you like vampires.
Yeah, I mean, it's where I learned to talk. I said pop until I was like 12, even though I was living
Amazing.
in Texas.
Super adorable.
Anyways, you were saying, I don't know how we got here. Oh, birthdays.
Right, birthdays. So yeah, it's happening, and for a really long time, I was just like, oh, it doesn't really like turning 30 is not a big deal. But then I think about my head wants it to be a 30th birthday, but it's actually a 40th birthday. I remember my mom's 40th
What?
birthday. Yeah.
Why is it a 40th birthday? I don't like this.
Well, I just remember we had all of like these black balloons that said like over the hill and that sort of
Mhm.
stuff.
Oh, yeah, for
And-
my mom's 40th too.
Yeah, and so it just reminds me that like some birthdays are like milestones and not just like the I can drive, I can drink, I can vote type milestones, but just like milestones of where you are in life.
Okay,
And
I
so-
thought you were saying that like this is the equivalent of us turning 40.
No,
I was like,
no,
I'm
no,
not
no.
ready to process that yet.
No, there's a lot of complicated feelings, like you like there's a part of me that's like more aware than ever of my like immaturities.
Mm,
And I'm actually kind of like taking stock of the things that I'm immature of and willfully choosing the things that I'm going to remain immature about. Because
I like that.
I think that as you get older, you have to retain a certain degree of like childlike humor, a sense of wonder, all those sorts of things that the world tries to take away from you. And that part of that can manifest in being a little bit immature. So like when someone says 69, if I chuckle a little bit on the inside, I think that I'm preserving a certain degree of that spark.
I'm definitely in favor of that, and I like that you are giving serious thought to what you will keep and what you will try to get better at. Because I think there are things that we should grow out of. Immaturities in being irresponsible or lacking in compassion or those types of things are probably good to grow out of, and I think people of all ages still have work to do on those. Those are ever evolving, but being intentional about trying to be better people is probably a sign of maturity.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like the fact that I'm saying that I'm going to try to abandon my immaturities of like having a quick temper or being super defensive is no guarantee that I'll be successful, but I'm going to give it a shot. and it I don't know, it just got me thinking about like, oh, I had something and it kind of went away a little bit. Bummer. Just like where
Well, I was gonna one thing that I thought of while you were talking is, I think the last time that you and I spoke at length about turning 30 was last summer-ish. We were at that cool pinball bar.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we were talking about how, so you this year, well, knock on wood, the world has changed, but hopefully we'll be running the New York Marathon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I'm still training for it, and I still got my fundraiser. Although I'm not asking anybody for money right now because I think we need to put that elsewhere.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But that's sort of you wanted to do it before or at 30,
Mhm.
and so that was sort of your turning 30 thing, and I accidentally published a book. It was a memoir, and I was like, this feels like my I accomplished something before 30 thing, and so I remember us discussing how neither of us felt a huge pressure to have a big celebration, and we were kind of feeling okay about turning 30 because we felt like we had these big hallmark things we were able to accomplish, in addition to like other great things that we've done in our lives, but these were like particularly sort of tied to turning 30.
Mhm.
I think as the days count down to my 30th birthday, I have definitely felt less and less at ease, I guess. I don't know. Like I a year ago was definitely very comfortable just being like, yeah, I'm turning 30, whatever. And now I'm like, I don't know, should I be concerned? Like, I have less than a month of
Should
being
I
in my
turn 30?
20s. Yeah, should I turn 30? I do maintain, and we'll get more into, maybe we'll get more into this about not being able to have celebrations, but like, I think I'm gonna stay 29 until I can have an actual party.
Yeah, I
I
think
think that's pandemic math.
you should be okay with being like 29 and 6/4.
Yeah. No, I don't. I mean, and I do also like. I think my version of assessing my immature qualities, which is a thing I perhaps should do. That was inspiring. Thank you for that. I think my version has been um, self consciousness, definitely over like the accomplishments and the place we are at our life, which I'd love to talk about more. But briefly before that, of the fact that I look so young, which less and less. I feel like I have visually aged a lot in the last year. And if I keep the mustache, maybe that'll really help. But just so often, like I get mistaken for like a high schooler. I mean, within the last year and a half, I got mistaken for a middle schooler. And so it just really messes with your mind to be treated as half your age, you know? And that's something that I, even in the times when I feel very comfortable about being 30, about entering that phase of my life, and I feel like I'm ready, and that's, you know, just it all feels right. And then I have that kind of thought in my head where I'm just like, I know how I'm perceived when I'm out in the world, and it really does mess with your head to be like perceived as half of your age when you're getting up to this level of
Oh, for
age.
sure.
You
Yeah.
know, it's different from like, oh, people think I'm 16 and I'm 22. Like, no, people think I'm 16 and I'm 30.
Yeah, I actually kind of feel a degree of that, and I definitely see where you're coming from. Like, it makes you feel. I probably don't feel it as severely as you do, where people are mistaking me for like 15, 16. But I think
You
that
do look young though. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's pretty easy for people to assume that I'm, 24, 25, because I kind of look exactly like I did when I was 24 or 25. So,
Do you remember the glorious day we were at a bar and you got carded and I didn't, and then you even got quizzed on your ID and you
I
couldn't remember the address you have on your ID
yeah,
because you still had a Texas ID.
it had been so long since anybody had asked me for those sorts of things to verify my age that I actually forgot my zip code. And I'm just glad that he didn't ask me for my like birth date, because I would have forgotten that too. And I definitely would have looked like that 15-year-old who's sporting some gnarly facial hair and like using his older brother's ID to try and pass at a bar. It was really weird. Um, and I think
I
that
loved it.
oh, dude. To a degree, I kind of
I'm
loved it too, because like I never even tried to like use a fake or to go to any
No,
of
I never
the
did either.
yeah any of the bars around school that like notoriously didn't card. I was just like, no, you know what? I'm just gonna stay at home and play SmackDown versus Raw. You guys go have your shots. And so like it was a little bit of having that experience that I never got. But yeah, like I do look a little bit younger. And what kind of gets weird with me is the fact that I also perceive myself as younger than I am. Like my mental
Yeah.
my mental image of myself, like actually, you know what? This is an interesting question, much related to the viral thing that was going around a little while ago about like which apple do you see?
Oh yeah.
Um, do you ever do like a third person video game view of yourself?
As someone who's not a gamer, I would say probably not video game, but I do have this weird thing where I like either imagine my younger self having gotten to like time travel and see me now, or like this must be an existing paranoia from high school, but sometimes I like think that my high school teachers have like the security camera view of me and can see what I'm still doing today.
Oh God, yeah. No, I remember that one. Uh, I had that about like things that I'd be doing. This is gonna sound really dirty, and to a degree, it's probably true. But things that I'd be doing like online on the computer, like I thought that
Uh huh.
somehow someone could like see like and like nefariously like see my every keystroke and like actually see like
Yeah.
where I'm moving my mouse.
Oh, I'm still paranoid about that.
Yeah, and for all I know, NSA agents who are listening to me record this, it's exactly the case. But like what I'm talking about is like how you picture yourself in your even your immediate memories. Like I do this thing where it's like a video game is the closest approximation, but it's really more like watching yourself in a movie where
Hmm.
if I remember something happening, I don't remember it through my perspective. I remember it through like a camera perspective or like an over the shoulder view or something like that. So like I can see
Okay.
myself as well. And whenever I think about those sorts of things, half the time the image, the avatar that I'm using is me at like 18, 19. Like I
Mm.
have like my long hair and the kinds of clothes that I would wear, even if I know that I was wearing a different outfit, that sort of stuff, like all these things that identify me as that time period. And because of that, I tend to think of myself as still kind of like an 18, 19, 20 year old. And
Hmm.
what's fucking with me about that is as I approach 30, I'm thinking about the fact that I'm about to be 30, but then I have this weird mental image of myself of being barely 20 and being like, yeah, I still have this like youthful look, and more significant than that, I still have all this time in my life, and this kind of like feeling of it's okay to not have all your shit together, it's okay to not have all your ducks in a row. And then I look at the calendar and I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And it does that with like everything else. Like I'm thinking about albums that I listen to. I'll be like, oh yeah, man, 2005. That's this album came out 2005. It's so good. That was only like 3 years ago. And I'll be like, no, 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 sir. That's 15 years ago.
Yeah, still doing any math from the 1900s as subtracting from the year 2000. Be like, yeah,
Yeah,
1980. That was 20 years ago.
yeah.
No, it was 40.
So like all that sort of perception of where I am in time is kind of fucking me up right now. Which
Yeah.
I'm like you. I was not really hesitant or kind of feeling some kind of way about turning 30. It was going to be another day. It was going to be another. I think my birthday falls on a Sunday this year, so it was going to be Sunday. I was going to surprise. I'm not going to church. Like just like every other Sunday. But now, like when I think about um, just that relationship with time, it becomes a little bit more real, and so it makes me feel like, oh man, I should be more mature by now. I should feel like I am in a more of a leadership role at work right now. I should
Hmm.
feel like I've made all these progress on all these projects, and that's another thing of you know time management in the time of COVID-19. Like
Yeah.
you see all the kind of like the live laugh learn or the live laugh love of COVID-19 is the now's the time to write that screenplay or whatever. And
I hate all that.
I mean, I don't disagree. I hate the pressure that it puts on people. I hate that kind of expectation.
Yeah.
But at the same time, as somebody who always has wanted to write like a novel or something like that, it's like, well, fuck, what am I doing now?
You're working, man. You're working and you're processing the most like i- biggest turnaround thing that's ever happened in our lives as a society. Like I'm just, sorry. I'm so annoyed with that stuff because it's like, all right, cool. We want to talk about how Shakespeare wrote King Lear when he was quarantined for the Black Death. First of all, it's hard to know that that was even the case because we don't have much data about what he was doing around the time, but also he was already filthy rich by that time.
Hmm.
And if he went back to Stratford to do it, he either wasn't living with his family because of this weird thing with his landlord, or if he was, like, he wasn't doing anything to support them. Like, he had zero responsibilities in his life except a slight pressure from King James to produce new content, which he hadn't done for a couple of years.
I love that you
Like,
just said
like
produce new content. That puts it in like the 21st century perspective.
well, what's funny is I mean, it kind of was like
Yeah.
Queen Elizabeth. Like, she wasn't the patron of his exact theater company at the time. They weren't like the royal company under Queen Elizabeth, and she didn't care that much for performances. But King James was like nuts for having theater performances, and also chose Shakespeare's company to be like his official royal company.
That's
And so there
wild.
actually was a lot of pressure for like a lot of plays to be being produced, and Shakespeare had been on kind of this downward slide of
Hmm.
not producing much. Um, and the plague happened a lot back then. Like, I don't want to like downplay how intense it was every time, but like this wasn't like it was in 1606 when King Lear was written, like this wasn't an unprecedented time where this had never happened. Like the plague had been popping up since here and there, like since the 12 or 1300s, and within Shakespeare's lifetime, this was like probably the at least fifth instance of the playhouses being closed due to the plague. So like
Jeez.
he wasn't going through as much extreme like shock and anxiety and grief as all of us are now because something like this has never happened to
It's
us.
like,
And
oh,
again,
bollocks, another plague.
yeah, and again the privilege situation of like writing King Lear, first of all, was his job. He didn't have a job outside of that. So anyone who's like, still has to be working, whether they're working from home or they're an essential worker, like feeling the pressure to be like, you got to write your great American novel right now. Like, no. And like Shakespeare didn't have to take care of a family or anything because he was a man in the Jacobean era. Like, it didn't, he didn't have responsibilities for childcare or
Hmm.
caregiving. I'm sorry. I'm just so annoyed in so many ways by that stuff being
No,
thrown out there.
hey, I know I need to
And I
hear
just went
that.
on a super nerdy rant about it.
Dude, that was incredible actually. Just throwing all that stuff about the context of Shakespeare's writing off the top of the dome. I'm not even going to lie. That's impressive. So I'm 100% here for that. But like it's obvious that I kind of needed to hear that. So I appreciate that. And maybe there are other listeners, prospective listeners that are tuning in that also need to hear that and kind of like see that perspective on COVID-19 for the bullshit that it is. At the same time, I do kind of think about, just the I don't know, the looming thing. It's funny, the global pandemic should be the looming thing in my life.
Hmm.
But to an extent, the liminal transitional period of turning 30 feels like the looming thing in my life. I think it's because right now
Mm.
we're in the thick of the situation, whereas this is something that's still further down the line. So like, yeah, those are the sorts of things that I'm wrestling with here is like grappling with my own self perception, how the world sees me, and like whether or not that means that I'm being taken seriously as an adult, and to like bring
Mhm.
to tie it back into kind of the theme of the podcast, whether or not that means people are taking me seriously as a man. Um,
Mm.
and I say man, not not specifically for like the male identifying part, the masculine identifying part, but for man as in adulthood. Um,
Yeah,
as
yes.
opposed to boy, as opposed to kid. Um,
Oh, man. I mean, I think we've been planning on having a whole episode about that because I definitely have many things I could say on that. Continue your thought, but there's a couple things I want to tease out from what you were saying.
well, that actually is the thought. Is that like the looming stuff? So it's funny. I thought that we would start talking with like the lighter hearted parts of us turning 30, but
Nah, when do we
yeah,
do that?
we've gone straight for the throat, and so we're probably going to wrap up with the kind of goofy parts about being 30. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking about is the fact that like in my head, I sometimes picture myself as being younger than I am, like not even just like
Hmm.
by a couple years, but like an entire stage of development. Um, to the outside world, sometimes people still perceive me as being younger than I am, and I think that that means that I kind of and to add one other thing, there's the pop culture that I've grown up with, which kind of in like the late '90s, mid 2000s, we were seeing really a lot of kind of to an extent celebration, also kind of a send up, but like a lot of saturation of like the slacker man child um,
Mm.
archetype. And I don't know, it's because I love Clerks. I don't know if it's because I love movies like Friday. I kind of identify with that. And I think that there's a certain degree of like Arrested Development. Uh
Yeah.
like yes, the show, but also like the concept where like I see myself as like I don't have to have my shit together yet because this character on this show that I love or this character in this movie that I love, he's 29, he doesn't have any of his shit together yet, and I don't have to have my shit together until I'm 30. And now I'm like, "Oh shit, I'm 30 in like 2 months."
Yeah. Um, man. I mean, in terms of like, having your shit together or feeling like you have accomplished, your magnum opus and like that kind of pressure. Um, I remember when we were talking last summer at that pinball bar, and
It's a
I
good
brought up
pinball bar.
something. What?
I said it's a good pinball bar, folks.
It's a great pinball bar, and we're not going to tell people the name of it because I want to keep this, want to
I,
keep it
I was going to
under
ask
wraps.
which one, but anyway.
That's true. You hang out with me, you get to know a lot of pinball bars. I found another one we got to go to, by the way.
Oh, yes. Things to look forward to. Anyway.
Yes. Oh, right. Gosh, I hope they survive and reopen. Oh, man. I didn't realize how much I love and cherish and spend time at bars and coffee shops
Oh, dude.
until this happened. And how much I love the staff at each one. And I'm just like, they're all laid off so that they can rightfully collect unemployment, and that's good. And I hope some of them are probably going to find different jobs if the bar or cafe or whatever is able to reopen. And if that's better for them, I'm happy for them, but I'm going to be so sad to not see them anymore.
Yeah. It's going to be a whole new landscape when we start going back to like our favorite bars, our favorite venues, our favorite restaurants.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad that you have kind of a silver lining there, is that maybe some of those people who were working there as kind of like a stepping stone to whatever's next, maybe now that they're on to the next thing, or they've, maybe out of necessity, they moved to a new town and they have more opportunities there or something like that. So maybe there'll be a silver lining there, but I definitely think that the whole landscape is going to be different, and that, I don't know, like, when we make it through this, I'm hoping to be in the condition, financially, mentally, spiritually, where I can be like, all right, I'm going to go and just drop as much money as feasible at, in my local bar and restaurant scene, and help people get back on their feet.
Yeah, I know.
Do
me too.
part.
I've been running my budget with regards to like, okay, where can I donate? Like, what places, local businesses can I buy gift cards at? And then also like supporting family and stuff like that. It's like, oh my gosh. But anyways, last summer, in not brighter times, just different times, we were at a pinball bar. And
Previously,
I said something, and I don't know how much you agree with it, but I'm going to repeat it because it will lead into something else. But
go for it.
Just basically how you and I have similar aspirations, I think, for our futures of the types of careers that we want to have, the types of like towns that we might want to settle down in, and that kind of thing. And I noted that whereas you have, an element of your personal life together, like you are married to your best friend, and it's great, and you're both wonderful. My personal life's more of hot mess, dead on arrival. But then my career side of things, I mean, but I feel like of some of the career goals that we share, I have maybe advanced towards some of them in ways that you have not yet. And so I feel like we have achieved opposite things. But so we sort of tie out in the end. And but yeah, I was thinking about that today when I was thinking about like some of the ways that we might be feeling different pressures on turning 30. Because I think I have a lot of the self-consciousness around career stuff, and, thinking I should have accomplished more. I think I've told you this before, Bo, but I was last minute cut from the Forbes 30 under 30 when I was in my early 20s.
You did tell me that.
I spent like the rest of my 20s just really wanting to be on the Forbes 30 under 30, and this was the last year, and it didn't happen. And every year, because I'm fortunate to know a lot of very cool people, there's always someone that I know who gets named on it. And a newer friend got named on it this year. And the thing that really struck me was like, I didn't even know she was younger than me. And she's done so many cool things and written so many best-selling books, and I was just like, what? Anyways, so the point is that, yes, there are still things that I feel pressure that I should have done by this abstract age that we as a society have decided means something. But the one thing that this whole pandemic has actually relieved some pressure on for me is I was thinking about just how this is gonna have long-lasting consequences. For those of us who are in a more privileged position, who will hopefully survive this and be financially okay. Like, we might not be for a while, and like just. I heard someone say early on of how, like, for millennials specifically, we all like graduated into a recession, and we were just getting our shit together when this happened. And this is gonna be, globally an economic challenge for a long time. Um, and all of the ways that there will be various consequences from that just made me start thinking like, man, if I don't like have kids until I'm almost 40, which is increasingly common and probably the case for me at this point, like I don't feel as bad about that now because like that's just going to that's going to be so even more common for our generation.
Yeah.
Um and like and substitute in for that so many other things that are going to take people longer to achieve, or just different like goals and stuff that will have had to change. And when you're able to like look back or relate to someone like, oh yeah, well, XYZ happened to me because of the pandemic, they'll be, oh yeah, like everyone will understand. There's sort of this like shared understanding through our shared experience of this, even though everyone's experiences are a little bit different.
Hmm.
So I don't know, in a way that kind of relieved pressure. I was like, well, I mean, there's nothing I can do about this. So, like, yeah, there's stuff I wish I had accomplished by now, or different tracks I were on. And some of that's going to have to change now just because of my situation with regards to the pandemic. But that's happening to everyone. So it's kind of okay.
Yeah, that it is really interesting that like, and every generation has this. I say like as a history nerd myself, like um my boss and I were talking about just the year 1918, like the stretch of
Oh, yeah.
1917, 1918, and I was like so much stuff happened in like the 4 year stretch between like 1916 and 1920, because you had World War One, you had the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, you had the Irish Revolution, you had the influenza, and then you have like the burgeoning of so many other things, that the introduction of prohibition and other things that would have like these really long lasting consequences throughout the entirety of the 20th century. And like
Hmm.
we have, some of our maybe not earliest memories, but definitely strongest memories for people within our generation are things like 9/11, are things like the
Hmm.
invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq, shock and awe. And now the financial crash, um, and now this. So like, we kind of like are continuously running into these things that are, maybe obstacles isn't the right word, because that implies that life is a what's like a straight line trajectory, which it's not. These are the things that are adding the curvature to the trajectory of our lives. But yeah, like we're all kind of experiencing this same dip. And this is a weird connection, but did you see Hustlers?
I didn't, but I know that I really, really should.
It was fantastic. It was just like really well done. But B, like it opens up with some stuff taking place in 2007, um, and kind of like this foreboding but positive thing is like, yeah, the character is recounting the year 2007. She was like, everything was so good, and we were making all this money, and la 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 la. And then like in the back of your head, you're like, oh, but I know what's about to happen, and it's the financial crash. And so every character's life is impacted by it differently, and it was interesting to watch that right now, because I can remember that, even though I was fairly insulated from it, because I wasn't working. I was just getting out of high school, that sort of stuff, so I didn't really have as much on my plate as far as like a hyper competitive but opportunity dry working landscape or something like that. But just the fact that something like that impacts so many different people on different levels, and now here we are living through that, and yeah, it's gonna redefine what the trajectory of a life is. I think we grew up with definitely like grandparents who got married in their teens and had their first couple of kids by their early 20s, and then parents who maybe got married in their mid 20s and had their first kids by 30. And now here we are, a lot of people in our generation are getting married younger, sorry, getting married later and having kids later, and that's the new normal.
Yeah, it is. Like whenever I do the math about that, or think about for people who want to like have their own children biologically, it does sometimes worry me because like when you're past 30, 35, and giving birth, you're considered like a high risk pregnancy. And
Mhm.
then just thinking like, okay, if I don't have a kid till I'm like 40, I'm going to be almost 60 when they go to college, and like all that kind of stuff starts getting scary. But then
Mhm.
on the other side, like I think a lot of parents who wait until they're that age, or maybe not intentionally wait, but like don't have kids till they're a little bit older, like are sometimes better parents because like think about how much we have worked through. Like sure, sometimes you're a little bit more financially stable, but mostly just like as a person, you've worked through a lot of your own shit before you bring other people into the world,
I
and like I
mean,
think that's good.
yeah, like me personally, I have friends who had kids at young ages. Why can't I say the sentence? I have friends who had kids at young ages, and they're doing great, and like it has become like this defining facet of their lives, and they're so happy with
Yeah,
their little families. I know
it definitely works for some
I
people.
could not have handled that at like 22 or even like 25. Like,
No.
there's no version of me that maybe, just learning out of necessity. Yeah. But, yeah, it just wouldn't have worked out well for anybody involved, probably.
I don't know that I have anything profound about this, but when you were talking about the different things that are very specific generation, not even like millennials, because that is a big range, but us born in 1990
Yeah. Yeah.
have been through. I was thinking it's kind of interesting that like each of these big things that happened at what was already and is already like a milestone time. So like 9/11 was the start of 6th grade, which for me was the start of middle school. And like that would have already been a division in my life between like end of elementary school, you don't really remember hazy childhood memories. Then like when middle school starts, that's like a
Hmm.
whole different version of life. And then like the start of the recession and like the Obama era all started senior year of high school, freshman year of college.
Hmm.
Definitely a huge life change. And now this, right as we're turning 30. And so it's I don't know what to take from that, but it's interesting.
It's that the universe hates 90s kids. We got
Gen X has been typically pretty screwed over too,
yeah,
let's say.
yeah, true. We got Tamagotchis and Pokemon, but that's it. Those are the good things. I'm kidding, obviously. I actually remember the years of the financial crashes, some of the times when I was like the most motivated. Um, and I think part of that was because I was kind of coming into a certain degree of political awareness, and I had gotten to
Yeah,
take part in the Obama election, and I felt like, my vote
yeah.
mattered, and I still feel like it does. But I definitely think that other things that we've seen since then, cough 2016, would imply that maybe they don't, maybe it tests that faith. So yeah, um, that's what I have to say about that.
Should we talk a little bit about some of those more shallow, lighthearted things that
Ooh.
we had thought about? Namely, just so another thing in the like um feeling okay about turning 30 and tying it to you writing a you writing a marathon and me running a book. Yes, that is it. I ran a book. I wrote a book. You were going to run the marathon. um One thing that I had said around that was like, yeah, I don't really feel the pressure to like put on a big party because like that was my big thing. I can just do the same thing I do every year of have a couple of friends go to a bar or something.
Hmm.
But then as 2020 started and I got closer and closer to my 30th birthday, I was like, no, I do want to do something kind of special. I don't know what, and I didn't come up with anything. And I'm kind of glad now that I didn't come up with anything because my birthday being May 4th, right now New York is saying that all of this is only happening till the 29th, but I don't think everything is going to miraculously open by the
Yeah,
next
it's
business
not
day,
going to
which would be
be.
my birthday.
And for the record, you and I have talked about this. It shouldn't be an overnight change, and
No.
any good trend that we see should be looked at with a degree of cautious optimism, because we do not want a second wave, because it's very clear that here in the States we were inadequately prepared for the first wave. So
Yeah, and just me as an individual, like I think it's going to be a while before I feel comfortable like being in the same space with I mean, even just a couple of my friends, let alone like a bigger setting with crowds of people. Like I definitely want the reassurance of more testing and treatment and substantial downturn in numbers here in New York City
yeah,
before I feel even close to comfortable. Like I don't think I'm going to feel I mean, I may not ever feel back to pre-pandemic levels of comfort in large spaces and with health and sanitation and all that kind of stuff, but like definitely won't feel close to comfortable until we have a vaccine, which is going to be like 18 months from now. So
yeah.
all that to say, doesn't look like we're gonna have big parties this May.
Yeah. I mean, that is kind of the shallow thing that I keep on thinking back to, because like last year when I turned 29, I had a big plan. It was the first or the last year of my 20s. So like going back to that kind of like stunted growth man child archetype
Hmm.
from 40-year-old virgin, or what's another, from Clerks, or from Waiting, or Slackers, any of those other kinds of movies. Um, I don't know what that says about my character, but like in that tradition, I wanted to kind of like really steer into, this is the last year of me being a stupid 20 something. And I wanted to do like paintball or laser tag, or, something else that's like going to like Dave and Buster's and just playing a bunch of video games, only like doing all the things that I would have done at like my 12th birthday, but now there's booze. And like, being like really, really ridiculous about it. And I didn't. I opted, because like the thing about the last couple of years is that I've been like tired constantly.
Speaking of getting old.
Yeah, right. And then I was like, I don't want to put the effort into putting it, and it was expensive and all that kind of stuff, to do something like laser tag. And then so I was like, I'll just do it next year. And now, all of my I'll just do it next year planning for the big 30 is kind of amounting to nothing. But
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily mean like I've found like joy that I wouldn't expect in things that I normally hate doing. Like the other night I was on the phone with my grandma for like an hour. I don't hate talking to my grandma. I hate talking on the phone. It could be anybody. It could be like if Neil Gaiman called me on the phone right now, I'd probably let it go to voicemail and just make sure that I called him back at some point. Like I hate the phone that much. But the other night I talked to my grandma for an hour, and I was like, you know what? This actually ain't so bad. So I'm trying to kind of
Hmm.
lean into the things that I would take for granted otherwise. So that I think that might be what my 30th birthday is like now, is like having a Skype call with my parents or something like that. Depending on what the situation is like and where we're at.
Yeah, you've got a little bit longer. Um, I think some stuff will probably be reopened by your birthday, but yeah, I mean, who knows what that'll actually look like? And
Hmm.
yeah, um, I forgot that there was this big theme last year where I just noticed that everyone I knew who was turning 29 seemed to do the exact same thing of like wasn't really sure how they wanted to celebrate, and when they got close to it, they were just too tired, and we
Yeah.
didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And I actually, I was trying to remember what I did for my 29th. I couldn't remember, and I just remembered I happened to be on a trip with friends. It wasn't like scheduled for my birthday, so
Hmm.
they did like a nice little surprise. They made me a cake, and like that was very fun. It was just a thing that happened on the trip, and I had told people like, oh, maybe I'm gonna do this big thing back home when I get back. And it, like the weekend of it came to it, and I just told everyone, it was like I don't want to see anyone. I don't even want like five of us to go to a bar. I am exhausted. I want to go to bed at 9:30 tonight. Okay, bye. I
Well,
forgot. That's
well,
what I did.
I think that means that like maybe we're starting to get to the point where we're no longer having to like synthesize and manufacture our joy, and we can just take joy in the things that are actually joyful to us, like watching a movie by
Yeah.
ourselves and not having to deal with hosting and planning or anything like that, or not having to shell out a whole bunch of money, or going to bed early or something like that. And that's okay.
Yeah, I've already been thinking my birthday is on a Monday,
Hmm.
and so I was never going to celebrate on the actual day. Anyways, I host trivia on Monday nights, and I was kind of excited to like host trivia on my birthday and like see some friends and people at the bar and stuff, and that of course is not going to happen. But I've already been thinking about the specific local business that I'm going to order some takeout from.
Hmm.
Gonna have a big old delicious meal by myself. And yeah, maybe watch a movie or TV show. I mean, in reality, I will probably end up on the phone and video calls with people all night, but that's not a bad birthday at all.
No, yeah. I mean, luckily we do have the technology. We're like, even though if we can't
Yeah.
see people, we can still bring them into our lives. So that's another thing that will kind of help us get through this time. It's that I was joking about it earlier, being together without being together, but it is kind of it's an interesting thing that while we're facing down this disease, the conveyance of which is human contact, we're just finding all these other ways to actually reach out to people.
Yeah. I mean, it blows my mind to think about, both mental health wise and economically, how much worse this would have been had this happened in the 90s.
Hmm.
Like, even just the 90s or
Yeah.
even just the early 2000s.
Oh man, could you imagine like trying to log on to like AIM right now? Like
Yeah, I mean,
on like a dial up?
all the news, websites crashed on 9/11,
Jeez, that's
so they
wild.
just never had that many people trying to access them at the same time before.
Yeah, yeah. That's another interesting
But just,
thing.
yeah, like, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say another thing about like the stuff that our section of the millennial generation has been through. I feel like because we've been growing up as the internet has been growing up, that
Mhm.
our capacity to access information about what's going on in the world and our capacity to archive it and our capacity to opine on it has made these situations that you know otherwise we might, depending on where you are geographically and socioeconomically, there might be a certain degree of insulation from. Um, but now that kind of doesn't exist. Like I remember to again, like, where were you on 9/11? I didn't know what the World Trade Center was.
No, me either. I loved the Twin Towers, didn't know they were called the World Trade Center.
See, I didn't even know what the Twin Towers were. I just wasn't even that familiar with the New York City skyline. I thought the Chrysler Building was the Empire State Building for a really long time. So the gravity of the situation was lost on me until probably midday on September 12th, which is, still pretty soon after, but I didn't have that immediate visceral reaction.
Hmm.
Watching all this unfold and seeing news from Europe and seeing, Italy's on lockdown and this is the death rate in Spain and this is what happened in Germany and all that kind of stuff, like unfolding moment by moment, has made it so real. And so I think that that capacity makes anything that we experience as time marches on much more immediate.
Immediate for sure, yeah.
And then the fact that we can then look back on it makes it more real. And the fact that we're all kind of like, even if it's something like sharing a meme, like you see like I see my friends that I grew up with in Texas sharing the same memes that my friends that I have here are sharing, and that's indicating more and more this like shared experience.
Yeah. I think, one thing that I keep telling people, throughout this weird time in our lives that we're in, especially people who are lucky enough to be able to work from home and still have jobs where they are working from home, but are feeling frustrated by the fact that, they think they're not good at working from home. Like maybe they've never worked from home before. I keep reminding them that this is not a normal time, and that even those of us who have worked from home for almost a decade are struggling with it too,
Hmm.
because it is such a weird time that it's very tough to concentrate. That's one of the biggest sort of symptoms I think of this stress, and for some of us anxiety moment is lack of concentration, and I feel like that is reflected in our podcast today. Like we keep jumping all over, but
Yeah.
also like keep going back to what this big thing is that's weighing over us. You said a few minutes ago that you a little bit feel like turning 30 is weighing on you more, but is it?
I would say, if I had to immediately conjure up a metaphor, if I'm a boat,
Mhm,
turning 30 is a storm that I see that I'm about to go into. So it's like
mhm,
there, but it's bounded. Whereas
mhm.
the COVID-19 situation is the ocean.
Mm,
You know, it
okay,
it's
yeah.
it, it's everywhere. It's under the surface. There are moments where it's very calm. There are moments where it's incredibly violent and present. So yeah, that's the closest weird, oddly specific analogy that I can come up with. Where like, yeah, the the 30 thing seems like something that's hanging over me, whereas the COVID thing is something that seems like it's literally surrounding me and encompassing me.
I think that for me, the ocean is still COVID-19, is still the pandemic. Turning 30 is like this port that I've got to dock at.
Hmm.
That is maybe this like really, really big one that I've been working up to for a long time, but is still sort of turned into, and maybe it's like a career milestone or something like that. But it's something that I keep forgetting that I have to do, and getting annoyed that it's gonna happen.
Yeah,
um,
don't forget to turn 30.
s- yeah. Well, I just feel like there's stuff I gotta do.
Hmm.
I think part of it for me that complicates it is this year is also my 5 years since coming out and starting transitioning.
Hmm.
So 2 weeks before my 30th birthday have been my 5 years on testosterone. 2 weeks after my 30th birthday will be my 5 years coming out publicly.
Hmm.
So I've got all these other big milestones, and especially being a trans person on the internet, you feel a lot of pressure to produce content surrounding those types of anniversaries. So I just feel like there's a lot that I have to do. In some ways, I'm very relieved that I don't have to plan a party, like you were saying earlier. You don't feel the responsibility to host because, my gosh, I have too many other things to do.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm too busy to turn 30.
Well, good thing you're postponing it then.
Yeah, I'm postponing until after the pandemic. I'm too busy. I mean, I will say there's a lot of stuff in my life that I am, in some ways, I don't want to completely say I'm using this as an excuse not to do, but I think this knowing, or sort of like being softer on myself, and knowing that, like, hey, it is going to be harder to concentrate. It is going to be harder to be as productive as you want to be. And like, there's all these things happening in your life, and like, respect that. Um, I think I'm doing a little bit better than I ever have before at kind of prioritizing and saying no to things.
Hmm.
Because I'm so bad at both of those things. I'm
Hmm.
just constantly overcommitting to stuff and not being able to do everything. And one thing that's coming out of this experience for me right now is like knowing that this is such an exceptional time in all of our lives, and knowing how it's affecting me individually, like, is just helping me be able to be like, nope, don't need to do that right now. That is not a thing that needs to happen right now. Or like, you can tell that person no and they will understand.
Yeah. No, I think this is, as much as it's laying raw some of the inherent cruelties of life in contemporary America, it's also kind of like showcasing a lot of people's capacity for compassion, whether it's for
Mm,
one another or for themselves, and like learning how to give yourself a break, because this is a big thing to be confronting, um, and like being patient, being extra patient with people, but also being extra patient with yourself.
yeah. And I do, yeah, I do want to say, like, that is not to say that I'm not absolutely terrified by this whole situation and distraught. And, um, we're both in pretty privileged situations, but have definitely been touched by it in some ways. And yeah, I don't want to. I don't know. I guess I just want to sort of check ourselves on the fact that
Yeah,
this is a
yeah.
bad thing, and it's really, really, really bad for a lot of people.
No,
And we're
yeah.
trying to find some silver linings, but yeah.
Yeah, that's I think that's good. Like I'm not going to look at this moment and be like, "Oh, this is the best thing that could have happened to me." Or something like
No,
that.
no, no.
It's just the fact that like when you're facing any of these things, you have to take what little victories you can get.
Yeah, I
Um
gotta find some light somewhere
yeah.
to get through it.
Yeah.
Um,
Um
all
and
right, this is gonna be our longest episode we've ever done. Oh,
to
I was just
yeah.
gonna say if you had some final thoughts. It sounds like you do.
Oh, I will keep it short. Another thing that I think about when turning 30 feels daunting is the fact that it just doesn't really mean what it used to, you know? Like,
Yeah,
uh, and I know that we're in the middle of like large global changes, but I'm still kind of subscribing to the notion that 30 isn't really like midlife anymore. I think part of the reason why 30 got so much value ascribed to it is that for a really long time, people were living to be 65, 70 years old. So 30 was kind of like a little bit of a peak. Um, but, now because of medical science and modern technology, people are living longer typically. And so I think that it lacks some of the existential punch that it used to. And that is something that I'm kind of like looking at whenever things do feel a little bit heavier. And then also the fact that, like, you know, getting older doesn't mean that anything gets necessarily like slower. And I think this is me coming from the perspective of like a metal listener, where a lot of a lot of the big metal bands are metal bands that were big in the '80s, and you look at some of the front people that we have to choose from, and they're kind of like they're icons that became iconic when they were older. Like, I think about Lemmy from Motorhead,
Mm,
who, had a very long career, and like all throughout the '70s and '80s, he was already iconic. But I feel like in the '90s and the 2000s, when he's reaching his late '60s and '70s, and he was just this hard drinking, chain smoking, mutton chopped guy in a cowboy hat for some reason, he became not just iconic, but like legendary. And so I think that age kind of adds that as a certain degree of mystique to people, because they've been through some shit, and also they've survived some shit. Like, I think another like idol of mine is James Hetfield from Metallica, who, he's been in and out of rehab a couple of times. He has been open about his personal struggles. He's really open about like how he tries to navigate his emotions as a man. And he's the riff lord. He's the driving force behind the biggest metal band of all time. And if you look at him in pictures now, he looks fucking great too. So like, there are ways to look at aging, not necessarily as like a daunting thing, because it doesn't have to be. It's what we do.
yeah. No, I love that. I mean, I definitely think I think for the most part, I'm really happy about turning 30, and I am so excited to sort of just be in this phase of my life where I know who I am a little bit better, and feel like I've just wanted to sort of like this, like I just want to like settle down. I want to like move to a small town.
Yeah.
um but like I just feel ready for that phase of my life where certain elements of it maybe I am kind of slowing down,
Hmm.
but other elements like I'm just getting started, like there's
Yeah.
um like yeah, I don't know. I've had trouble articulating it, but I guess it's similar to everything you've been saying. But just sort of getting back to the like, do we actually feel this age thing? And like for the most part, I really do. Like I feel maybe even older than 30. And I love that. And I'm while at one time in my life I did sort of feel in that arrested development of like late teenage years, like it's been a while since I felt that.
Hmm.
I have definitely felt like an adult for a while, and I think I'm kind of excited for my, age to reflect that in some ways.
Yeah. I think you are a little bit further along on that track. I think that's why I'm kind of like wrestling and having to look at like my elder statesman of metal for inspiration, is because I still maybe have a couple of hangups about where I am in life, where I thought that I would be by this age. Part of it is because I wasn't quite sure if I would make it to this age. Um,
Yeah.
so like I didn't really have a plan for it. But
Hmm.
I think that what I'm hoping to get to is to a point of like intentionality, where it's like you're talking about knowing yourself a little bit better. Like I want to get to that point too, and be like, okay, this is what I'm going to be on this day of my life.
Yeah. I think for me, it's a little bit more that I spent a lot of my early adulthood so far, like looking back in time,
Hmm.
and wishing things had been different, and wishing I could have changed things. And one thing I realized when I was writing my book was like, I am so sick of looking back.
Hmm.
I don't know what forward is, but that's the direction that I want to look, and that's what I want to focus on.
Ooh.
And I think that realization has been like one of the things that has helped me with this the most, of
Yeah.
being okay with being 30.
No, that's strong sauce right there. I really like. I don't know what forward is, but that's the direction that I want to be going. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
Nice. All right. Well, I'm glad that I remembered that, because I hadn't actually thought of that in a while, and it makes me feel better. But I'm glad it resonated with you.
Yeah.
Maybe it helped you feel a little bit better.
Yeah, I don't feel bad
Um,
about turning 30, but I just feel about turning 30. That let me
that's real.
I'll put it that way. But
That resonates with me.
but I think what I'm trying to get to the point is where it's less feeling all the things and more of like, choosing to feel like, yeah, forward is where I'm going.
I will say, bringing it back to the whole, like, not getting to have a party kind of
Mhm.
thing. I that might be one thing that maybe does bother me about that a little bit,
Mhm.
is it almost is gonna feel like it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Like, this, whether we want it to be a milestone or not, whether we want it to feel momentous or not, like, it is
Mhm.
in this society and culture that you and I happen to live in. Um, and to think that my turning 30 is going to be waking up and doing the exact same thing alone in my apartment that I have done for all of this quarantine, and like maybe hopping on a video call and ordering a burger to my house and then going to bed, and not doing anything super big to market. I don't know. And I
Mhm.
guess, like, for everyone, like, birthdays are, you wake up and you do the same thing that you do the day before and the day after. But I don't know, somehow having a celebration marks it somehow. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that is what I feel when I think about, like, the possibility of not getting to do something for it. Like, I know you're right that by the time my birthday rolls around, more stuff will probably be open, but I just don't
I
think
don't know
that.
if I want to go to your birthday. If you have a birthday party, I don't know if I'm
Well,
gonna want to
yeah,
go. I'm just gonna be
that's
straight up,
that's
man.
the thing. I don't know
That's
if people are
scary.
going to be comfortable going out. I don't know if I'm going to want to go out. And it definitely will feel different to not market. But there are small ways, I think, that you can mark milestones. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be um like big parties or big gatherings. I'm trying to think, like, I usually do them with food. Like,
Yeah, same.
I'm trying to think of a great example, but graduation. When I graduated from college, since Sloan and I were in different schools, we had like the big all school commencement, which we went to or whatever. But she had one on one day, and I had mine like either earlier that same day or like the day before, something like that. We weren't together. Um, for part of it, and part of that was because of, like, the limited amount of tickets that you have for your family or whatever. So I went to fucking Smack. Did you ever go to Smack?
Nah, because I'm lactose intolerant.
They got,
Jeez.
if they come through this, they have lactose free. But yeah, so I went. It's this place that just does macaroni and cheese, and I got like the largest portion that I could get of the cheeseburger macaroni and cheese. Took it back to our apartment and just ate it. Like that was my party. And so, like, there are little moments like that where, even if it's not necessarily a big to do, it can feel like you're patting yourself on the back, I guess.
Yeah.
And not just because you're
Yeah, I don't
choking on
know.
the fact that you ate your macaroni and cheese too fast.
Oh boy. Well, stay tuned. Follow our social media, see what we end up doing for our 30th birthdays this
Yeah.
year.
Uh,
Um we Before we completely go for the day though, we do still have one more segment that we need to do.
Yes, I was like, are we going to do it? Are we going to do it? Because we have been at this for a hot minute.
This is a long episode. This is what happens when we're not in a studio where we get kicked out at a certain time.
Yeah, for sure. Many thanks to the YouTube space for hosting us on so many other occasions. But this has given us a certain degree of, we're drunk with power right now, I think.
And only power.
Yeah, only power.
Drinking water.
It's a Tuesday.
But
anyway.
It is Tuesday. How about that? All right, let's move on to Just the Tip.
Just the Tip. Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I have no preference, but I do want to say unless you want to edit it in later, we're not going to have a sound effect because I'm too tired to figure out how that would work for the MacGyvered audio that we're doing right now.
Oh no, yeah, fuck that. I'll just give you a 3-2, like a 3-2-1 when we're at it.
Yeah, same.
Okay, cool. And I can probably edit a sound effect in at some point. We'll fix it in post.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so do you care if you go first?
No,
or
not
second?
Really.
Oh no.
I'll go.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. You ready to go? I'll start the timer in 3, 2, 1.
All right. So for my edition of Just the Tip this week, this episode, whatever, we don't do this weekly. The kind of emotion that I want to express is one of gratitude, and it's kind of a silly little thing. But I hope it doesn't come off as like snobby, but in this time where people are like having to panic buy their groceries and they're having to buy stuff that is like shelf stable and, try to be smart about their food choices, I'm really glad that I learned how to cook. I feel like that's something that men aren't really expected to do. But because of being with my wife, and she's a fantastic cook, and I had never really cooked like vegetables or anything like that until I was with her. Now I actually know how to put together a meal, and a lot of times what we've been able to do is like just dig around in the back of the fridge
4,
and work with something,
3,
and it's really great
2,
to improvise. Yay!
1.
Wow.
Can you hear the timer?
No, not at all.
Okay, I was like, it's in my headphones. I can hear it, and I couldn't turn it down because then I wouldn't be able to hear you talking. Oh man! All right.
Well, I got it out there.
No, that was great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not to knock anybody who is living off of like ramen noodles or canned food. I had SpaghettiOs earlier today, so I'm not only cooking, but it's definitely made this easier. And again, you take the victories that you can get. Anyway, you ready?
Yeah, this is me a hot mess.
Okay, let's lean into it. Starting in 3, 2, 1.
All right, so I actually changed what I was going to talk about, but I want to talk about something that, a very weird thing that brings me joy. 11 years ago, in 2009, my parents divorced. It happened right at the end of the semester, so I came back from college. My mom had moved out, and I was just like alone in this big house. Well, not alone. My dad was there. Anyways, that year, Susan Boyle was on Britain's Got Talent, and I discovered this show, Britain's Got Talent, and I got really into it. And I kept watching it every spring, anytime it was on, and particularly the hosts of the show, and Deck, brought me a lot of joy, and I started watching all of their other shows, and I really, really love watching them, and I literally just like smile subconsciously while I watch them. And every spring is Britain's Got Talent, and somehow spring has often been hard times for me. And right on cue this year, Britain's Got Talent is premiering again on Saturday, and it has just become this thing that like brings me joy in the darkness, as stupid of a show
5,
as it is.
4,
and yeah,
3,
I'm really happy it's coming
2,
back because I need it.
1. Perfect. I gotta say, you nailed that too.
Oh, thanks.
I'm really glad that's coming back. Like another thing that's been helping me get through is some like my favorite cooking shows are still airing. And I started watching Lego Masters, which is like a competition show for building with Lego.
Oh, I keep getting ads for that. Will Arnett's the host, right?
It is worth it.
I would definitely check it out.
Will Arnett is the host, and in the first episode, he says Legos, and then does like a hand to ear kind of gesture, like, "Oh, what? It's supposed to be Lego? Oh, that's so the plural is Lego." So to the eagle-eyed observer for a Christmas episode, I didn't know that until you pointed it out, and now it's all I can see. So thank you.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I looked it up, and it's apparently, Americans say Legos, and maybe it's not quite correct,
It
but there's
is,
a lot of Americanizations of English that are kind of acceptable now.
and as usual, we're
Um,
wrong though. But anyway,
yeah, all the yeah. Well, speaking of the English, quick note on Britain's Got Talent.
yeah.
It is coming back for half of it at least because they shoot all the like audition episodes earlier on in the year.
Mhm.
But jury's still out. If the live shows, they do a whole series of like live
Right, yeah.
performances later on in the season, which would be end of May-ish, and I don't think that's probably going to happen, but we'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see how they do it.
Yeah, hopefully they
I
get
mean, this is. Go ahead.
I was just going to say hopefully they get creative and either stretch out the timeline or figure out a way.
Yeah, that's it. We're all having to get creative and figure out how to do things. Everything is brand new in a way. We just got to used to. We have to get used to not knowing
Yeah.
and things not being what they were.
Oh, buddy. Into the great unknown.
Well, to anyone still listening, thanks for sticking around for our longest yet episode.
Most free form.
Yeah, we do still. And I'm not actually positive on the order, but we do have at least one other episode that we did already shoot in the studio with the video component. Or if you haven't seen old episodes and you want to watch them, you can look us up on YouTube. I think our YouTube URL is youtube.com/c/everything's bigger. I don't know. Search everything's bigger on YouTube.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. But also, while we are in lockdown and who knows how long it's going to last, we will continue recording this way. And honestly, the overall workflow, I believe, we'll know after this, but I think it's a little bit easier. So maybe we'll even have more episodes come out. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
I'm
so make sure
up
you
for trying.
Yeah, we'll try. We'll see. Bo's computer is not great. That's probably the biggest challenge at the moment.
But we work with what we got.
But yeah. But yeah, so make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcatching app. We're on all of them if you're not subscribed already, and definitely leave a rating and review that helps people find the show.
And you can follow us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, which is the same thing.
Those are the same platforms. Yep.
Spotify, Google Play, and wherever fine podcasts are sold. You can also follow us individually, or you can follow us, the podcast, on social media at BiggerPod on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow us individually. Follow Jack at Jack is not a bird. You can follow me at my shiny new handle, which is inadvertently appropriate. That's El_enmascarado, which is a riff on the Spanish word enmascarado, which means the masked man.
Wow, good.
Yeah.
You were ahead of the game on being masked, having your mask on.
Yeah, luckily now I have a collection of masks. Unfortunately, in true luchador fashion, none of them cover the mouth.
I was gonna say, luchador masks do not cover. So I was like, oh, I've got one of those masks. Nope, not gonna help.
But yeah, so Jack, thank you for rolling with the punches on this and for going remote on this guy and being patient with my shitty computer with me.
Yeah, one more quick thing. We announced this on our social media, so follow BiggerPod on Instagram or Twitter so you don't miss these. But we were going to be doing a big James Bond marathon this month to coincide with the new James Bond movie. Because that movie was postponed, we decided to postpone our Bondathon episode. You can still go to our social media to see the select movies that we are still going to be watching. I have not watched all of them yet. The whole point is that I have not watched them while Bo is a huge fan. So if you want to follow along, and sometime before November is when it's coming out, right?
Yeah, so it was originally scheduled for like this week. It was supposed to be out like now, the first week of April, but it got postponed to November, which I actually think works better because that's the traditional Bond release month because it coincides with Ian Fleming's birthday. So that's what I think that's what we're going to shoot for now. And we have our Everything's Bigger Best of Bond, one movie per Bond watch list. But now that we got so much time on our hands, to a degree, I don't know about you, but I'm going to shoot for watching them all and see what we
I don't think I'll get all of them,
I'm going to see
but
how
I'm
far I
definitely
can
going to
get.
watch. Yeah, I'm gonna try to watch more than just the list. Also, great recent development. The only ones that were on any streaming service, like if you subscribe to streaming services, without having to pay extra for the movies, the only ones where Pierce Brosnan were on Netflix. But now, apparently, all of them except Daniel Craig movies are on Amazon Prime. So if you're an Amazon Prime subscriber, you don't have to pay per movie anymore.
Yeah, and a bunch of the Connerys ended up on Hulu as well. So basically,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, if you have any sort of these streaming services, which probably now are really really things to have.
Free trials.
Yes, dig into it. You can find Bond in so many different places. He gets around.
That's true. All right. It is way past time for us to wrap up this podcast.
All right. Thanks for sticking around. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, prospective listeners. Everybody wash your hands and stay fucking safe out there.
Ditto. I'm bringing back the ditto from the 90s.
Nice. I'm going to stop
All
recording
right, I'm going to
now.
stop.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
I'm going to stop recording now. I'm pleased to report that I could not hear you peeing.
Yes!
So hopefully your coworkers have not either.
Oh, man. Depending on my mood.
Well, that's how you want to get back at them?
Yeah.